Welcome to the Copperton Mining Railroad. Today we're going to talk about Denver and Rio Grande's low-grade line. It was the first ore out of the open pit operations. So stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about the Denver-Rio Grande low-grade line at Bingham. It was called the low-grade line because it carried the low-grade ore to the mills. Now, it was also called the High Line. A lot of people called it the High Line, and the local press at one time called it the Bingham Skyline. So now there was two companies at Bingham, Utah Copper and Boston Consolidated Copper. They both contracted with the Denver Rio Grande to haul their ore to the mills. Before this time, they were moving the ore off the mountain by way of the Copper Belt Railroad. Now, Denver Rio Grande had purchased the Copper Belt Railroad in 1905. The Copper Belt Railroad was using Shay locomotives to haul the ore down because the sharp curves and the steep grades. 7% and over some of these grades were. And so they needed something to haul the ore more profitably and haul a lot of it because they was going to start the open cut mining in 1906. So they needed a good way to haul the ore to the mills. So Denver and Rio Grande started construction of the low-grade line in April 1906. It was completed in February 1907. Now, from the beginning, they could not keep up, even with this new line. Both companies were demanding heavier rail and more ore cars. In defense of the Denver and Rio Grande, their whole company was expanding and they was merging with the Denver Rio Grande Western, and so they had a lot going on. So they wasn't going to put too much money into this low-grade line, especially after they put so much into it from the beginning. But it was just a year after the completion in 1907 that Utah Copper organized the Bingham and Garfield line. We talked about the Bingham and Garfield line, and that was in 1908 they organized it. Now it took them until 1911 to finally get that Bingham and Garfield line completed. And they actually used both of these lines until the 1920s. In 1925, September 21st, Denver and Rio Grande Western, they'll sell the low-grade line plus the Copper Belt branch and the Yampa branch to the Bingham and Garfield Railway. So anyway, we're going to look at some great pictures of this building this low-grade line. Now, these pictures from BYU and the George Edward Anderson collection. So there's some great pictures by him and some other photographers at the time. Now we're going to start at Welby and just follow the route on up. Now we're going to look at this route closely because part of the reason the failure of this line was because of this route. Now, first of all, it went all the way to Welby and then to the mills. And that's a long ways away from the mouth of the canyon. So let's look at these maps and then we'll show you some great pictures. We don't have too many pictures of Welby, but we have a lot of pictures of them building this low-grade line. You see, here's a few pictures of Welby right here. And there's an overhead picture of the old roundhouse and some of the footprints that left there. And they have some old foundations over there, a few different things, some overhead shots of that. And then the train station they had right there actually was moved down to Gardner Village. So that's the chocolate factory down in there. So if you want to go see the train station that was in Welby, go to Gardner Village. Then we work our way all the way up to the mouth of the canyon. And that's quite a ways, like I said. Now here, this is where the route changed and made a great big horseshoe turn at Lead Mine. So let's show you some great pictures of this horseshoe bridge right here and this turn they made right here at Lead Mine. They got some great old pictures of that. Then they went back east up the hill. Then they headed south. And they went almost as far as Lark. Now that's a long ways out there. They did that to get enough elevation so they could come into the canyon a lot higher than they were. So look at these great construction pictures they have of them building this line down here in the foothills going over to Lark. They were doing these great big fills, and they were building these bridges. And they did it all with horse and buggy. Did you notice that? It's all handwork. You can see all the horses on these pictures right here, and how they was doing the grading with these horses, and it's all hand pick and shovel, I guess. Looking how they did this construction, it just makes me wonder what they would think of just one bulldozer down there working on it instead of all these horses. Then they almost got to Lark, and they made another great big horseshoe turn. Here's some great pictures of that horseshoe turn right here. Now you can still see this from the old satellite picture of this area. You see how that turned right there. And also right here, it's kind of interesting. They had this going into this loop right here, this horseshoe loop. They used these skirts on this bridge right here, and then they filled in. And so after a time, they filled this whole canyon in, but this is how they did it. Then they just headed back north, and you can see all this grading and bridges they did heading back north in the foothills, and they kept gaining elevation. I think this whole route was 2% grade. And so they have some great pictures of these building in these foothills right here of the Ochre Mountains. Now this is interesting. While they turn the corner, go up the canyon, they have this notch right here on the mountainside. You can see some pictures of this notch up on the mountainside. Now I took this picture last year in 2020, and this is the only remaining visible sign of that railroad, is that one notch right here on the mountainside. So I thought that was kind of neat. Now from here they worked their way up the canyon. You see them digging up on this hillside, how high they are up in this canyon, digging along this edge. That looks pretty scary. In this picture you can see the canyon below and how high they are up in this mountain. Here's an overall view of the line. And so you can see why they called it at one time the Bingham skyline or the High Line. Some neat old pictures of them building and doing the filling up in here. Now when they got closer to the mine, they used these little steam engines with these little waste cars. They could start filling in the canyons with those. Have some nice big old cuts through here. Anyway, so then also they built some tunnels on this line. See them working on these tunnels. Some of these pictures was taken in 1906 right here of them digging. Now this picture right here, here's a close-up of this guy working on this, digging this tunnel right here. And doesn't look very happy, does he? Anyway, some great old pictures of them working on the tunnels, getting closer into the mine. Now this picture was taken years later, and the mine's expanding, and they're actually covering up some of these old tunnels on that line. So that was kind of neat. As they got closer to the mine, they built their rail yard where the trains would come down out of the mountain and start stacking up here. This was called Copperton Yard. It's just way high up on the hillside right here. I see a bunch of pictures of Copperton Yard up here. So that's really kind of neat. See the trains right here start, all these loads coming down and start stacking up, and they're still working on this area right here. Well, this picture was taken in 1907 of the yard. Here's some more pictures of the yard and the Cuprum area. You see the mine in the background right there. Now this is kind of interesting. This picture was taken in 1925, and this is the year that Denver Rio Grande sold their this low-grade line to, oh, it's the Bingham and Garfield line. Now this last picture I'm going to show you is a really neat picture. This is you can see on the right is the Copperton yard, and on the left side is the Bingham and Garfield line. You can see just a little bit of train right there on the Bingham and Garfield line. So it was probably taken around 1912. Now they both came in at the same elevation. That was 6340, or they called it A level. So that's a really neat picture. So that's the building and construction of the low-grade line at Bingham Canyon Mine.